This is Alex Ansary for July 28th, 2020. It's been about a year since I've gone over this ebook, and instead of going over it all at once, I'm going to select at random key sections that include scientific citations. I have already expanded upon my speculative theories and ideas, but this body of work is much more than conspiracy theory. It is really my own personal analysis of the true nature of human psychology as how it is affected by the sun and other cosmic factors. This would include eclipses. So there are things that take place here on Earth. There's the reality of human fads, human trends, human movements, for better or for worse, love them or hate them. We see an intensity of the human behavioral response at this time. As we see, for example, 60 days of rioting in Portland, Oregon, widespread destruction of private property, including innocent people, seeing their small businesses attacked. We see the rise in geopolitical tensions between China and the United States as consulates are shut down. And all of this on the aftermath of comet neowise making a very close approach to Earth. So from the sun to various moon phases to the passing of orbiting bodies, comets and asteroids, we are affected in a profound way. So this is less conspiracy theory and more so a discussion about the true nature of human psychology as it is today, but is not taught in school. So in today's recording, there will be others. We will start with the introduction. Now, this was initially written in March of 2013, and then I shelved the project, walked away from it, and went on to do other things. But I've always talked about the sun. It's always been a passion of mine. Then I took those notes, being somewhat of a perfectionist. I wanted this to be a much larger body of work with even more citations because there's many other books that are out there that connect even more dots. There's a book called Chasing the Sun, by the way, which is nearly 1,000 pages, but I thought against that and decided that time was of the essence. So this was released to the public around the time of August of 2013. And so this was written, just so you know, as we were experiencing the maximum portion of solar cycle 24. And if you're following spaceweather.com, you are probably seeing that there is an increase of sunspots representing the new magnetism, a new magnetic polarity of the sunspots, indicating that we may be moving into solar cycle 25 very, very soon. And so we're going to start with somewhat of an introduction and then go into some other areas. One of the more recent reports that I discussed, which was a new one, is how dogs are affected by changes in the Earth's magnetic field, how it's being used to navigate. So I would say that there is a plethora of information now that previously was not available. So going now to the ebook, the area of research of how the sun impacts the Earth, climate, and human behavior still remains widely unknown. However, today there's a vast amount of historical data available which details the dramatic changes taking place on the planet and all living beings during periods of solar maximums where solar activity reaches its peak. And as I've said in recent years, we're affected by the changes in the sun or the effects of the sun even during solar minimums, when there may not be a lot of solar activity, but all of a sudden there's a burst of solar activity or geomagnetic activity. So I do want to make that clear. This information is an examination of how the 11 on average solar cycle of the sun brings our planet diverse change through increased earthquakes, natural disasters, extreme weather patterns, climate changes, disruptions to power grids, new ideas, directions, movements in society, and changes in human expression and behavior. This includes personal transformations and spiritual awakenings. Now remember, not all transformations of consciousness are for the positive. Is it a positive thing if there's widespread destruction of property? Is it a positive thing if nations are going to war and the powers that be are staging that war? So keep in mind, when you hear about collective shifts in consciousness, that means a great many things. We will examine the correlations of battles, beginning between nations, launching wars of aggression, or the rise of tyrannical states by examining a 2,500-year timeline of solar maximums throughout human history. This would include examples of what we might identify as staged, managed events that are created in order to frighten, anger, or traumatize the population during times where the human societal energy has the greatest potential to evolve consciously. Some of the largest protests, movements, riots, and general abstract resistance to authority or control can be found during these times. But this is also why, interjecting here, we see manipulation of social media to get people to quote-unquote rise up, even if the end result of what they're doing is unmindful and destructive. And so there's constantly the agenda to control revolutions and protests. And today with social media, they have a greater ability to do that. So essentially, we're going to be applying pattern recognition by comparing the trends with solar flares, major events, staged and naturally occurring, and societal change, including personal transformation. The purpose of this information is to supplement, add on to, what you already may know about the systems of control and the occult practice of staging events in conjunction with particular celestial occurrences. This is also there to add on to what you may already know about the potential for a dramatic expansion of our consciousness and spiritual evolution in this new cycle of time and energy that we are now in. Now remember that understanding the cycles of the sun and the changes that it brings leads one out of a polarized linear view of an outcome that points to one of two extremes. And those extremes relate to either being saved, right, or the apocalypse, total damnation. There is a middle way, which is a theme consistent in Eastern philosophy, something that I've always had a passion for since I was a little kid. Many researchers came before me that have tackled this topic, such as Alexander Chizhevsky, Dr. Raymond Wheeler, Dr. Burl Payne, of which we will examine one of his ebooks in the future, Mitch Batros, Alfred Weber, Carol Moore, Maurice Cotterell, and spaceweather.com. So at the moment of compiling this information in March of 2013, when I first began to put this ebook together, years before it was published, those were some of the main researchers that I was aware of. So their dedication towards this information really helped pave the way forward for people like myself. Nexus Magazine, spring 2009, was the first time I wrote about the solar flares and the Earth's weakening magnetic field. We are going to skip forward past the overview of the sun and the magnetic field. A lot of you have heard about NASA signaling alarm regarding a potential repeat of the 1859 Carotene event. And so since this information in this ebook has come out, this has become a regular topic. Often you're seeing videos on YouTube discussing this because with the Earth's weakening magnetic field, we're much more vulnerable to something that can cause billions, perhaps trillions of dollars in damage. It could even lead to possibly other major geopolitical events. And what if the power plants were to go down? This has been an issue for a long time, and the government hasn't done a whole lot. They've passed certain types of legislation, but they haven't done a whole lot. Unless people get prepared with food, building community, things of, other areas of concern, how prepared can one be for something like this? Of course, I interject a spiritual perspective to this as we do look at technology surpassing human spirituality. In the end, are we going to see the king of all solar flares, or as it's also known as the solar flare kill shot? Are we going to see that as a curse from the creator, or the opposite? Time will tell. So the big picture is still in development. Keep that in your consciousness. Despite congressional inaction on the issue, the government continues to quietly build underground bunkers at an alarming rate, which indicates they may know more about what's going on with the sun than what they are allowing NASA to reveal to the public. Therefore, we should ask ourselves the following questions. Is there a concern in the upper echelons of government and governments worldwide that their Tower of Babel may be on the brink of collapse? Has at any time this government discovered the potential of this event or other disasters with the use of remote viewing or other means? In what specific ways are the powers that be preparing for this event, and how do they intend to maintain a strong, dominant, and controlling position when their technology that's often used to suppress humanity is disrupted? Again, contemplate the social media influence over the unrest taking place today and how it seems to be taking place on the timeline almost strategically. How might a blackout in one part of the planet affect the global power structure, the balance of power, or the ability for one nation to attack and wage war on another? What kind of consequences could this country face in the event that our power grid is disrupted while China and Russia remain unaffected? They've done studies on what parts of the planet could be most affected. They're very concerned about North America. What kind of changes could we see in human behavior, perceptions, or spiritual interests in the event that people would be unable to watch TV or consume mass media? That includes YouTube. I see YouTube as a part of the mass media. How might such an event have a positive outcome down the line for people seeking freedom from dominating structures and oppressive systems at a moment when governments may not possess the technology or resources to suppress or manipulate them? The protests are not an example of mindfully rising up. Think about a situation in which the people are not organized on social media to gather in large places to scapegoat police departments and buildings. And imagine a situation where that angst has to be more mindfully expressed and more peacefully expressed at the local level, where people work together to overturn systems of injustice without destroying things, without attacking innocent people. What kinds of changes could we experience economically if our resources rebalance themselves back into the local economy and local currencies, markets? And this includes trade, a new renaissance. Now keep in mind, the Renaissance of Europe follows the solar cycle, bringing the people out of the Dark Ages. Could this potential event be something that levels out populations to levels similar in past historical tragedies? Could a King of all solar flare event be a form of divine intervention coming from a creator in order to humble mankind by resetting civilization? Finally, how might such an event bring people together in a crisis where friends and loved ones become more valuable than money or technology? And that's a big one. That's a really big one. Maybe more will be at play and is at stake than what we currently know. The nature of the questions we may ask ourselves brings to mind an ancient Chinese parable called Good Luck, Bad Luck. And we have more information from Maurice Cotterell, who is also somewhat of a philosopher. But for now, I'm Alex Ansary for July 28th, 2000.